What is up, everybody? My name is BobaTalks and welcome back to a brand new Flash Season 4 Episode 5 promo images breakdown. But I also want to talk about Episode 6 because there's a lot of stuff to do with Harry going on in that episode, or should I say multiple Welleses. Just stick around to that point in the video because, you know, we've got some exciting stuff coming our way, especially if you're a Harry or Harrison Wells fan in general. So these promo images are for Episode 5, Girls' Night Out, which is not this week's episode, but next week's episode, which is coming out on the 7th of November, I think. So if you haven't seen the promo images for this week's episode, or let alone the trailer, I'll leave a link down in the description below because I did a video on that as well. But let's jump into the synopsis for Episode 5, Girls' Night Out. Caitlin receives an ominous threat from her old boss, Amunet, and fears her past time as Killer Frost may be back to haunt her. Meanwhile, Felicity comes to Central City to help the girls celebrate Iris's bachelorette party, and Cisco, Joe, and the guys take Barry out for a night on the town. So this episode sounds like it's going to be quite funny, especially from some of the promo images, but also quite interesting as we got Killer Frost being a part of quite a bit of this episode. We've got Felicity coming in as well. We've also got the proper introduction of Amunet. We'll actually get to see her this episode. We'll probably get to see what had been happening between her and Caitlin, or should I say Killer Frost, since there's definitely some partnership or something that was going on between Killer Frost and Amunet. And if you didn't already know, Amunet is basically the top dog, or should I say the leader of the black market and everything that goes on metahuman wise in Central City, and she's got a whole bunch of people working for her. In fact, one of them is called Novok, and he's the one who got basically almost frozen to death in episode 1 of season 4 of The Flash by Killer Frost, where she sort of came out towards the end, where he was just basically like, you know, you gotta step away from Amunet, you can't do that, and she was just like, I can do what I want, and she, you know, almost gave him a bit of brain freeze, which I found really funny and quite lenient of Killer Frost to do, because since Killer Frost was mainly in control in episode 1, in that moment, I'm surprised she didn't actually just freeze his head, or, you know, slice it off when it was just frozen. So before we just dive into those promo photos, I want to read out something about this episode which highlights a bit about Killer Frost as well as Iris and what's going to unfold in the episode between those two characters. So Danielle Panabaker, who plays Killer Frost, had this to say about her character in the episode. When Killer Frost shows up, Iris has a lot of compassion for Killer Frost and a lot of compassion for Caitlin, and is pivotal in helping Caitlin reconcile herself with her past and some of the mistakes that Killer Frost made. So obviously towards the end of season 3, we saw that, you know, Caitlin basically said she was neither Caitlin or Killer Frost, she was something else. And obviously there was quite a bit of time, 5-6 months between The Flash season 3 and season 4. So I'm pretty sure during this episode we're going to have some of that time explored, maybe even some flashbacks with Amunet and some of the things that Killer Frost or, you know, Caitlin would have done. Because we knew when Cisco went and met her, she was working at that bar. As her Killer Frost personality as well was most likely really heavily involved in whatever Amunet was doing, and probably did a few things that makes her feel guilty, especially her Caitlin side. And judging by what Danielle Panabaker said, you know, Iris is going to be really pivotal in helping her reconcile some of the things that she did, which were probably quite bad things when she was Killer Frost. And, you know, I guess it's just going to be a bit of therapy for her, and just saying that it's okay, even though, you know, some of the things she did were probably bad. And just judging by the fact that she's quite tied up in Amunet's operations, and Amunet probably doesn't want to see Killer Frost go, and she's probably going to fight for that side of Caitlin's personality, since Killer Frost is obviously quite a badass and would be quite a left-hand woman, I should say, in anyone's army. So in some of these photos we can see that, you know, obviously the girls are having quite a good time. It is Iris's bachelorette party after all, so Felicity's going to be there, Caitlin, you know, is going to be there, Iris obviously, and they're all going to be having, you know, a girly girl time, having a bit of fun. But it's obviously going to turn into something else, because, you know, it wouldn't be right if it was just imagine if it just played out like a normal time on The Flash and we're just like, okay, well, that was not very interesting. But something's definitely going to happen that turns this bachelorette party into a bit of a failure, because judging by some of these photos with Cecile, Felicity, Iris, you know, they're all very serious and, you know, looking at the Star Labs computer here. So it's going to turn into something else entirely, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. So in some of these photos as well, we can see that the elongated man is still in episode 5, and judging by some of the things on his arms, and we see Harry, Cisco, and Barry looking like they're in the same room by the computer, and, you know, we see Harry, Cisco pointing towards Barry. I think maybe they're trying to figure out what they can do with the elongated man. Obviously in episode 4 is going to be heavily featuring his character. They're going to see how his hands can be, you know, extremely stretched, and that's all going to be incredibly interesting and fascinating for Team Flash in general. So I think this is a bit of a tie over into the next episode. They're still figuring out how they can control his powers. I don't think they're going to dampen them, maybe temporarily, like what they did with Caitlin for Killer Frost, you know, trying to tone down the powers until they can figure out a way that, you know, she might not be able to use them, or maybe use them without going evil. I think with whatever is going on his arms or the sides here is a way for him to temporarily control the powers until, I don't know, they can obviously figure out that he might be able to use them for good, keep them under control, etc, etc. So I have to say, in all of these photos, Katie Sackhoff as Amunet looks absolutely brilliant. You know, she really does look just fantastic as a metahuman evil character. If you didn't already know, Katie Sackhoff is a brilliant actor. My favorite show that she's been in is Battlestar Galactica. That is just an absolute fantastic show, and I've said this before in one of my videos, but if you haven't already seen that show and you're into sci-fi, trust me, watch it and you will love it. And I don't think she's going to be too happy about Caitlin or Killer Frost withdrawing from, you know, Amunet's black market operations, if you will. So I think most of these photos are in present day. We see this photo of Felicity in the club. I think something might be going on around this time in the episode, and Caitlin goes out as Killer Frost, and then she is forced to deal or talk with Amunet, who is obviously very not happy that, you know, she wants to leave. Who knows what will happen here, but let me know what you think is going to happen in this part of the episode. Do you think some of these photos are flashbacks, or do you think it's all present day Killer Frost talking to Amunet? It's going to be interesting to see, because Killer Frost still might want to be involved in Amunet's operations, and obviously Caitlin doesn't. So it's going to be, you know, obviously we're going to get a lot of Killer Frost this season. Daniel Pannenbeek said, you know, obviously if you're a fan of Caitlin, you know, you're going to be happy, but if you're a fan of Killer Frost as well, you're also going to be happy. So I think Killer Frost is still going to be quite you know, a force to be reckoned with. She's still going to have her own independence in terms of personality than just Caitlin. I don't think she's going to be split down the middle like she was at the end of season 3, where she was just like, I'm neither Caitlin nor Killer Frost. I think there might be a bit of that, but I think predominantly it's going to be interesting to see if Amunet and Killer Frost, in this conversation that's happening between them in these promo photos, is just going to be like, you know, well, I'm still up for seeing you, and, you know, obviously Caitlin's going to be like, well, no, I don't want anything to do with that. So let me know all your ideas in the comment section down below as to what you think is going on between Amunet and these Killer Frost photos. Now let's quickly dive over to the photos of the lads on their night out. We can see that they end up in some sort of prison cell, or just, you know, a cell where you can sleep off, you know, being disorderly or, like, you know, drunk or whatever. And we see that Barry looks absolutely hammered, leaning up against that sink. If you remember in The Flash, it takes a lot for Barry to get drunk, usually something created by Caitlin, you know, in order for him to get drunk. So I'm pretty sure something like that's going to happen in order for Barry to look this wasted. We see Joe is in there as well, which is very funny to see because, as we all know, he's a cop. But we also see the elongated man and Cisco in there as well. So whatever happens in this episode, I think is going to be a very funny moment. I've already conveyed my thoughts about the humor in The Flash season 4. I love most of it. I just don't like the Iris and Barry humor scenes because I feel like they're a bit forced. But I think stuff like this, especially in this part of the episode with the guys, I think it's going to be really natural comedy, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what ends them up in this prison cell with this stranger also sleeping on Cisco's shoulder. And lastly, we see that Joe is talking to Barry, and in the background that looks like the cell in the Cortex where, you know, Barry was writing all of those symbols when he wasn't himself, when he was very scrambled with, you know, being in the Speed Force for all that time. I don't know what could be going on in this photo. Maybe Joe is talking to Barry. I don't think it's going to be the subject of anything like Cold Feet. Maybe they're just talking about, you know, their relationship, and maybe, you know, him being in therapy therapy with Iris, or just who knows? It could be about Joe talking to Barry about, you know, Cecile being pregnant. I wonder when that's going to come out in The Flash season 4. But let me know what you think could be going on in this conversation between Joe and Barry here. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I wanted to talk a bit about the Council of Worlds thing that is happening. So episode 6, I'm sure is, if you haven't already heard, but if you have, it's probably a lot of people's most anticipated episode of the season so far. And the episode name is called When Harry Met Harry, and I'm going to read out the synopsis for you now so you can get an idea of why I'm very excited. When collectors of Native American artifacts are attacked by a meta named Mina Chaitan who can bring inanimate objects to life, Barry turns to a surprising ally for help. Determined to crack the identity of the Thinker, Harry enlists Cisco's help to summon the ultimate think tank, the Council of Worlds, a round table of the brightest Harrison Wells from various Earths. Now, if you're thinking that this sounds a bit familiar, well, that's because of, well, of course, Rick and Morty, like the Council of Ricks. If you're not familiar with Rick and Morty or the story of this episode, or you just haven't got there yet, a brief synopsis is across the different dimensions, loads of different dimensions, different Earths, all these Ricks came together to create this Council of Ricks, and there's even thousands of them who come together from across the multiverse. So in The Flash, obviously you can tell that's where they got the idea from with the Council of Wells. Obviously, if you're quite familiar with The Flash, and you should be if you're watching this video from season 4, we all know that Harrison Wells is incredibly smart, if not the smartest man, well, you could argue, across all the different multiverses. We even had a moment in season 3 where, because Harry left to go back to Earth 2, the team needed another Harrison Wells, so they sent out a message across the multiverse because they knew they'd find, you know, a really, really smart Harrison Wells. So it's very interesting to see how they're, you know, there's a little round table of Harrison Wells, which together makes, you know, the Council of Harrison Wells, and they all come together because they want to unmask, well, not unmask, but reveal the identity of the Thinker. And who's better to do that than the Council of Wells? So I can't wait. Let me know what you think of this story, or, you know, the synopsis for episode 6 titled When Harry Met Harry in the comment section down below, and let me know what you think could be included in the episode. I was talking to a couple of other YouTubers like Paigey, the DC TV show, and Eric's Reloaded, and we just said how funny would it be, just like how every Rick has a Morty in the Citadel and, you know, the Council of Wells. It would be funny if every Harry or Harrison Wells across the multiverse had a Cisco. I really would like to see that if a couple of Harrison Wells on the Council of Harrison Wells has a Cisco, because that would just be brilliant. But other than that, guys, that is everything I wanted to talk about in this episode. Obviously, we didn't talk about really this week's episode. It's more next week's, the week after this week's episode and the one following that. We've got a lot to look forward to with the next 3 episodes of The Flash. So let me know what you're most excited for in the comment section down below. I'm willing to bet that it's the Council of Worlds. For me personally, it is, because I love Tom Cavanaugh. I love Harrison Wells as a character in general, and the fact that there's, you know, a whole multiverse, which is obviously very heavily, you know, a Flash thing of Harrison Wells. So I just can't wait to see multiple Harrys sat around a table discussing and, you know, amongst each other about, you know, who could be the Thinker. So let me know in the comments below what you're most excited to see. But other than that, guys, hit that like button if you did enjoy this video, and only if you did. It really does show your support for the channel. You can follow me on social media around here. The links will be popping up or in the description below. Other than that, guys, all I've got left to say is thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.